For the first lesson, we're actually going to hit three different chapters out of the electrical systems book. So jumping right in here, there's a lot of different stuff we want to get into. So chapter one, we want to talk about the National Electrical Code (NEC). Particularly here, we're going to talk about Article 110. And a little bit of time in Article 100 as well. So you guys can read through the objectives here. But probably one of the bigger things, once again, here is a little bit of navigation of the NEC, but particularly we want to talk about Article 100, which, as you should remember, is definitions, and then Article 110 is going to be requirements for electrical installation. So a lot of kind of your basic overarching requirements, right? Uh, and again, you guys can read through these objectives here, but right away, some ways of navigating the code. They've got some ways to indicate what's been changed since the previous edition. So you're going to see right away, if you see shaded text like this, okay, that's, as you can see here, it's used to indicate revisions from previous issues. So they tell us to go to Article 100 and check a definition for device. I like this definition a little better, but anyway, you can see this has all been added since the previous issue. That's how you can identify new content, right? Or I'm sorry, revised content. So the N is going to be new material that previously did not exist. So for example, you see this N down here, that's indicating this section is new to this edition. A bullet point is used to indicate that one or more paragraphs have been deleted. So we can come here and actually there's nothing here, but there used to be in this line. So they've taken something out in that case, right? And then extracted text, they have brackets are used to denote extracted text from another document. So an example of that, you're going to see here, they're actually referencing another document. I don't think that's going to be too terribly helpful for you guys, but that's what that does mean when you see that. All right, so another definition we're going to talk about is AHJ, authority having jurisdiction. Basically, the thing to know here is that's going to change depending where you are, what area geographically, or what industry you're working in. We all know authority having jurisdiction, just as the name says, that's the guy that's going to kind of cover all these duties and responsibilities that you see here. As we said, definitions are going to appear in Article 100. We do see definitions in other places. So in other articles, we may have uh, uh, definitions that contain a section that has terms used in that particular article only, or down here individual sections. Sometimes the definition is included in the specific NEC section to which the definition is applicable. Right? All right, so one of the first sort of definitions let's talk about is accessibility. Are we accessible, readily accessible? What's the difference? We know right away, anything run inside a wall is not considered accessible at all, right? That's easy. Now they're getting into mentioning portable ladders, right? So is this accessible? Sure, we need a ladder. Is it now readily accessible? No, it is not. So certain things have to be readily accessible. That means it cannot require a ladder to get to. The definition of that, where do we need a ladder or not, they're going to tell us 6'7" is the sort of the magic number there. You're going to see that rule throughout the code, right? So now let's talk about a structure here, or a building, I should say. So what defines a building? Well, I think it's obvious in most cases. However, in this case, for instance, we have a separate firewall. So these are actually can be considered two different buildings from the code perspective, right? This is just a big house with an attached garage. We don't have that firewall, that fire-rated wall. That's the big definer there. If it splits the space completely with a firewall, we can now call it a separate building, right? Another definition they want to talk about is device. Okay, a device is something that carries and controls electricity but does not consume electricity. So a switch, a receptacle, they don't actually consume the electricity. A switch directs it, a receptacle allows a connection point, therefore it's a device because it does not use electricity. The argument is going to be made, what about your lighted switches, your various USB receptacles, things like that. Those might get a little gray. I'm still going to call them devices regardless, right? Wiring methods above lane and ceiling. They want to drop back to accessibility here once again. We still consider this to be exposed even though we can't see it. We still consider this to be accessible even though we can't see it. We can easily take that lane fixture out. We all know this. We do this all the time. Again, it's above 6'7". More than likely, it's not really accessible, but it is accessible. Right? Disconnecting means within sight. Okay, that's an interesting definition. Hopefully, this sounds familiar from year one. What is considered within sight? Well, literally, we can see it, but also not more than 50 feet away. If we're more than 50 feet, even if you can see it, it is not considered by definition within sight of. We're going to drop back here another sort of term, outlets. Okay, an outlet is something that does not use electricity but provides a means to access it. So here we see receptacle again. A receptacle is a device and an outlet. We could have an outlet that is just an outlet box, a light fixture outlet box, right? So again, something that allows access to electricity but does not actually use electricity. They're going to give us some different circuit conductor identification rules here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here on this, but a couple key ones to remember here, right, is we're going to refer to bus bars from A, B, and C top to bottom, A, B, and C left to right. Grounded conductors 6 feet or smaller shall be white or gray or identified with white stripes. And then another important one here where they get specific is the B phase on the high leg shall be identified by the color orange. All right. And we all know the rules for grounding conductors as far as being green, but that's about as specific as they get. So now this jumps around a lot. I apologize here, but a ton of stuff they want to hit. But anyway, so now they want to cover some clearances of electrical equipment. We all know the 3 foot in front of electrical equipment rule, or hopefully we do. And they get into kind of some more specifics as you get into higher voltages. But if we have grounded parts on a wall, you can see all the way up here to if we get above 600 volts, we now need to hit that 4 foot. But be mindful of your voltage for sure. And then exposed live parts on both walls. Again, if you're above 600 volts, is when we see a really big difference. But on the 0 volts to 150 volt to ground side, we're kind of stuck in that 3 foot all around. That's a good rule to live by there. Some more on the clearances here. Again, now they're getting into kind of some vertical clearances here. We need 6.5 foot minimum headroom. I'm breezing through this because this should be reviewed from year one for sure. And again, we have the 6.5 foot headroom. Again, no storage in front. We should know all that by now. No barriers or other equipment shall be located in the dedicated spaces of switchboards, panel boards, etc. So this is a nice illustration of this. So 30 inches wide or the width of the equipment, 3 foot out in front, and then again 6.5 foot or to the structural ceiling. Right, should be kept clear. There's no plumbing pipes. There's nothing else in there. That's the electrician's space for sure. So again, that was kind of a crash course. A lot of stuff we just hit there, but moving into chapter 2, they want to talk about now some branch circuits and feeders. Branch circuits are going to come from Article 210, of course, so you're going to see these various requirements from Article 210. Again, you spent a lot of time in 210 in year one, so we're not going to spend a ton of time reviewing this stuff. And then you see we actually get into 215 there on towards the end. But so we want to identify types of branch circuits, explain how branch circuits are rated and color-coded, list limitations of the loads of branch circuits, describe requirements for ground fault interrupters. Again, that's a big review from year one. Describe requirements for GFCIs, describe equipment for branch circuits, identify rating requirements, so on and so forth here. We get back into the dwelling units once again, which is a review from year one. So we have 3 main types of conductors here, right, guys? You're going to see your feeder. Let's start out here. Your service conductors, your feeder conductors, and then your branch circuit conductors. And actually, your service conductors are anything ahead of the demarcation point for the power company. feeder conductors then are anything after your main disconnect panel. And of course, branch circuits are going to be coming out of your branch breakers. I think most of those definitions are pretty easy to understand on the surface, right? So we do have 4 types of branch circuits. This may or may not be one you're aware of, but you have general purpose branch circuits, individual branch circuits, and multi-wire branch circuits. And I skipped appliance branch circuits there. So your 4 types: appliance, general purpose, individual, and multi-wire branch circuits. Those all should sound familiar and be comfortable by now. The grounded conductors of different systems shall be identified in accordance with 200.6. Again, grounded, we know we need to be white or gray, to put it in a nutshell. Excuse me. We do have to differentiate between different systems, different voltage systems. Typically, you're going to see brown, orange, yellow for 277, 480, black, red, blue for 120, 208. That's sort of the industry standard, right? Each ungrounded branch circuit should be identified by phase and system. So we need to basically have a consistency throughout a building system is really the biggest thing that they tell us here. And again, this is the industry standard. It really doesn't change from that. GFIs, I'm going to breeze right through these because I know you guys hit GFIs pretty hard in year 1. We know where we need them. Again, they're going to talk about bathrooms here, garages, unfinished basements, outdoors, just about anywhere outdoors without exception. Again, not to undermine this, but this is all very big review content for you guys from year 1. Crawl spaces is another good example. So, ton of GFCI stuff here, right? They're really hitting it, right? So let's just hit a couple of these here. GFCI protection required for duplex receptacles. I like number 2 here. GFCI protection required for 120-volt sump pumps in unfinished basements. That's dwelling units. If you've ever done elevator pits, there's actually an exception to that. But for residences, we still need that GFCI protection. Here they go within 6 foot of any sink. We should all know that. And that 6 foot is kind of almost think of like a wingspan. If you can stick your hand in the sink and reach a receptacle, it needs to be GFCI protected, right? And they do a nice job illustrating that here. It's the outside edge of that sink, right? Here we go again, telling us where we need these things. A lot of stuff on GFCIs. We know combination AFCIs provide protection against series arcs, parallel arcs, line to ground arcs. Ton of stuff in this chapter. Very introductory. Minimum branch circuit conductor size shall be equal to or greater than the non-continuous load plus 125% of the continuous load. Basically, continuous loads must be size. The circuits must be 125%, right? Receptacle spacing, I'm honestly not even going to address that. You should be well aware of that at this point. Where we need outlets. This is a nice illustration from your textbook. Go through it. Again, you should know this stuff at this point. We need it within 3 foot of a bathroom basin. We're going to need an outlet. Each one receptacle installed outdoors at grade in the front and back for dwellings. This is kind of a reminder here. Section 310.15b7 explains how we size a residential service. It's actually a little different than typical, so take a minute to check that code out as well. Again, some review stuff from year 1. So quickly, chapter 13, we're only going to hit a couple things here, right? We're not going to talk about this stuff. They don't need us reading that. We're going to do hazardous classified locations, right? So we're going to define some hazardous classifications. So just quickly here, we're going to talk about class and division. Don't worry about groups for now. So class 1, 2, and 3, we can see what indicates what class we might consider ourselves, and then division 1 or 2. So we have class 1, division 1, class 2, division 1, so on and so forth. And we can see what it means to be either of those divisions. They will hit hazardous locations again in the future and get into the groups here in a later chapter. Again, a lot of stuff here, so just spend a minute to digest these locations or hazardous locations as well.